Bayonetta 3 has had a crazy lead up to its release, being first announced way back at the Game Awards 2017 with just a quick tease, and then pretty much going dark for years until we finally got the full reveal gameplay trailer last year. But then it pretty much went dark again, and people are wondering if it was going to make its 2022 release date that it announced in that presentation. With it not showing up in any of the recent Nintendo Directs, people were getting worried. And things got even crazier when, out of nowhere, we got this major info dump dropped on us yesterday. I guess Bayonetta don't need no Nintendo Direct. They revealed a new trailer with more story hints, the release date of October 28th of this year, a less sexy mode, and a very sexy collector's edition. So I want to talk about all this stuff today. Yeah, to start off, the first thing that threw people for a loop with this was that it wasn't part of a Nintendo Direct or something, especially when we just had one a couple weeks ago. Now, there is something to be said about random trailer drops. It's cool being caught off guard like this sometimes, and it does allow the one game to be like the main focus of the day, which I do think works here with Bayonetta 3. Like, yeah, it doesn't need to be a Nintendo Direct, but I will say I still would have preferred it. This easily could have been the, just one more thing announcement in that last Nintendo Direct, and I think it would have put it over the top for a lot of people. I'm someone who enjoyed the last Direct just as it is, but I did see some disappointments in the heavy focus on a lot of older games getting announced for the Switch, and especially with this game being, a new Switch exclusive, it feels like, yeah, this could really have pushed that Nintendo Direct and brought a lot of those people onto the positive side. And also with Bayonetta not being a juggernaut franchise, picking those moments where you can treat it like a big deal are important, I think. Having it be once more that just one more thing announcement at the very end to close it out in front of all these people who may or may not be anticipating the game elevates it, in my opinion. Not to mention, just the day before, we got the random announcement of a new Kirby game, Kirby's Dream Buffet, which is more of a mini-game type deal. It's not like a full-fledged Kirby platformer, but it's also set to come this summer. So I'm assuming that is very imminent. It just seems weird to me that if you're going to drop all this stuff on people back to back like this, I would have included it in a Direct personally. With the Kirby game likely coming within the next couple months, it's definitely something you could have announced a couple months ago. I mean, if this game is, it's a summer game, so again, it's got to be in the next 2 months. You certainly could have announced it 2 or 3 months ago. I feel like if you're going to do just a random announcement and kind of almost wait to the last minute, you should just go all the way, do the full stealth drop. If you're going to announce the game this close to the release date just randomly on Twitter, why not wait till the actual release day so you could do that whole, and it's available today? Because there's definitely hype in those type of announcements as well. But yeah, a lot of this stuff, the way they're doing it does feel a bit off to me. But sticking with these new Bayonetta announcements, the game itself, the new trailer looked like an absolute blast. The action gameplay looks super clean and crisp. You don't expect anything less than top tier quality in that department when it comes to Platinum. We saw a bit more of the kaiju type fights gameplay, which totally fits into Bayonetta's over-the-top style. As a big kaiju fan, I love my big dumb Godzilla, Gamera, Power Rangers, monster fights. I could see this new aspect being my favorite part of the game, easily. There was this train sequence they showed where you're trying to outrun a monster and you're shooting it on a gun at the end. It just totally crazy, super cool. Like I mentioned, we got a few more story teases, hints at what the hell is actually going on. We're dealing with some sort of man-made bioweapon. We got to see some returning characters as well as new characters. Virgil from Devil May Cry is apparently guest starring in this game. And yeah, I guess he's changed a little bit. He's living his best life now. We're all super happy for him. There were actually some legit references that seemed pretty on the nose with Devil May Cry and Astral Chain, which is really weird. If you remember in the original Bayonetta 3 gameplay reveal trailer, they had that Lappy, the mascot from Astral Chain, walk around. Actually, a lot of us, myself included, thought this may be Astral Chain related at first because we saw that before Bayonetta came onto the scene. And now with the information we're getting on this game with like the enemy names and some stuff, it's like very similar to stuff from Astral Chain. So I don't know if there's going to be some legitimate tie-in. It's possible. I'm not saying it's going to be like a fully like, oh, they're in the same universe or something like that, but definitely something seems to be going on here. Yeah, all around what we saw in the trailer I thought looked awesome. The release date is confirmed once more for October 28th of this year, meaning that Nintendo's 2022 is definitely going to go down as one of the best years, in my opinion. Sucks that Breath of the Wild 2 didn't make it because, yeah, if that one still came in 2022, I think this year would be nearly impossible to top. But still an awesome year, nevertheless. So happy to be finally getting this game after all this wait. I mean, you figure when Bayonetta 2 launched on the Wii U, it wasn't that big of a success because, you know, for one, not many games on the Wii U were very successful at all, especially if you weren't like a Nintendo IP, Mario, Zelda, etc. So the future of the franchise was a little bit shaky, and then, like I said at the top, you know, we got this announcement in 2017, and it went dark for so long, people were wondering what the hell's going on, so like, finally, getting it in my hands, so hype. But we didn't just get this new trailer. There were actually a bunch more announcements made for the game outside of that trailer, which is also why I kind of feel like this would have worked better in a direct. You know, have all this stuff included in one place. And like, honestly, you could have thrown in a little 10-minute or so demo of the game being played, like show one level, and you could have just made like a dedicated Bayonetta 3 direct. I think that would have worked here, in my opinion, because, yeah, there was a lot more to talk about. If you just watch the trailer, you may not know that they're doing this fancy collector's edition for the game. It comes with a 200-page art book and 3 game cases for each of the Bayonetta games with new artwork that you can combine into like one panoramic image, which that's not even the best part of this collector's edition announcement, because you may be saying, wait, Bayonetta 1 didn't have a physical release on the Switch. You know, it was just a code. So we're getting a game case in this collector's edition for a game that doesn't even have a physical version? No, absolutely not. They are releasing a new physical edition of Bayonetta 1 for the Nintendo Switch to go alongside this. Now, sure, would I have liked them to do this at the start to begin with, when Bayonetta 1 and 2 were first released? 100%. But in an age where I've got to bitch about companies like Ubisoft pulling access to digital content like DLC and even full games, seeing Nintendo go back and right this mistake, make this once digital-only game physical, is a big dub, in my opinion. The only problem I see with this collector's edition and that is, you know, what is it going to be like to get all this stuff? What's the process going to be? Many of us Xenoblade fans had immediate PTSD having dealt with the Nintendo Store chaos recently. One thing that makes me hopeful is this at least won't be a Nintendo Store exclusive. They said they are going to be working with other retailers on this, so at least I don't expect any 8-hour waiting rooms, only for you to get nothing out of it sort of situations. But you still got to worry about how available is this thing going to be with Bayonetta being not as big of a franchise. This, once more, isn't a Mario or a Zelda. Plus, now you have to factor in those Bayonetta 1 copies. Are those going to be limited? Surely there isn't a huge market for that. Like, at this point, only physical collectors want this. Everyone else already owns and is happy with the digital version of Bayonetta 1. And you kind of need to pair that with the collector's edition, right? Again, I know for normal people, this is like ridiculous, but again, the collectors, I'm one of you, I know what we're like. I need the Bayonetta 1 physical game to put in that case with the 3 collector's edition. I will die without it. Yes, people, we have reached these levels of first world problems. I know for most of you it's hard to even fathom. But yeah, hopefully they've learned from the past mistakes. Like I said, partnering with other retailers makes me a bit more hopeful that this won't be an absolute disaster, because all this stuff is really cool. I want it. And again, I'm very happy, especially to see them go back and release Bayonetta 1 as a physical copy. Hope that's something we see more of. Not just with Nintendo, not just with the Switch, all over the place. I always want to see more of this. And of course, if we're talking about other new announcements for this game, we got to talk about the new Censored mode, Naive Angel mode, it's called. I do like that name. Got a lot of thoughts about this. To emphasize, this is totally optional. You don't have to have it on. It's a toggle, but it will cover up some of the more risque, I guess, stuff. Bayonetta's transformations, her summons won't show any skin. There's going to be like some cleavage covered up with some of the characters, I guess. Just straight up to start, I think this stuff is silly. The idea that you have this game, over-the-top violence, tons of sexual innuendo certainly still will be in it in the story, the cutscenes. You got finishing moves that summon full-on torture devices. And we're going to censor, what, less skin than you see if you go to a public beach? I mean, honestly, if you can't handle this game without this mode, do not go to a public beach, do not go to a public pool, because your head will literally, I guess it'll explode, because you're going to see way more than this. Now, I do think it has some place, some purpose, but not what a lot of other people I see think. The idea that this stuff restricts the game, that there are people who aren't going to play this because of some cleavage, maybe a hint of butt crack. Again, with all the other stuff that's going to be in it, but the cleavage is just, that's what's keeping me from buying it. That audience, I'm going to be straight up, it isn't real. The idea that you're going to appease weirdo game journalist types that, again, act like cleavage is some barrier to entry for a whole new audience. If this fighting game, if this JRPG just wasn't so fan servicey, didn't have such big busty ladies in it, I'd be so into it, I'd be the biggest fan. No, you wouldn't. Because if that were true, you'd be playing all the other games that don't do this, or that force this sort of censorship. This is something that has been proven time and time and time and time, and I'm gonna do it one more time again. I mean, I can name dozens, I'm sure many of you can name way more, Japanese games that have forced these sorts of censorship practices on Western audiences in an attempt to grab this large mythical audience that are all just waiting for this exact game with just a little less titty in it, and they're all gonna jump on board and throw money at you. But not some of the time, not most of the time, all of the time, 100% of the time. I can't name a single time where this is paid off. That audience never materializes. If anything, it's less, because way more people end up boycotting it because they want that original, authentic version. And on top of that, this group of people will never be satisfied. I'm going to write you the headlines right now when this game comes out. Expect this from your sites like Kotaku and Polygon. Bayonetta 3's Naive Angel mode is a solid step in the right direction, but it doesn't go far enough. Calling it right now, you're going to see a lot of that when this comes out. Because you also never will appease these people, because then they'd have to stop bitching, right? The bitching about this stuff is what gets them the clicks. So if you fix the problem, they can't bitch about it and get those clicks. So you'll never go far enough. And because of this reason, these people will always find something to have a problem with. I mean, look at just recently, Metroid Dread. What a great portrayal. I mean, Samus not sexualized at all in that game. Total badass, extremely capable, just doesn't give a shit, isn't afraid of anything. But, couldn't she have shown a little bit more of her personality? She's just like a motionless robot woman. What? I mean, this is a real article. How is it real? Why is it real? Because, once more, there's always going to be a problem. Now, the people I think this actually will help, and I do believe that this audience does exist, is people who were going to play this regardless, but maybe want to tone things down a little bit. Like if you're playing it in the living room, you got a girlfriend, a wife that may be walking in and out of the room, maybe your mom if you're a bit younger. You want to be able to cover this stuff up a little bit. I totally get that. In fact, it kind of reminds me of one of my favorite video game commercials, which was actually for Yakuza, the Wii U release that was exclusive to Japan. That still pisses me off a little bit. But yeah, I thought they had a great ad where the dad was playing Yakuza, and then to hide the game from like his wife and kids, he started playing it on the Wii U gamepad, which that's also a bit of a benefit of the Switch. Similarly, you can play it in handheld mode, so you don't have these big titties blown up on the big screen. And then, like, eventually his wife actually looks over his shoulder and still catches him doing, like, the Hostess Club stuff, and he screams. Yeah, I love that commercial, and that's a situation I understand, but this idea that is truly make or break for some people, that it's opening up the game to this whole new audience that, Like I said before, they're okay with the over-the-top violence, maiming, dismemberment, the use of torture devices, the various other sexual innuendos and that come with these games. But if they just showed a little less skin, because that's what's keeping me from playing it, that whole idea is just ridiculous. And that's why at its core, I don't have a problem with this, people pushing this idea of like, oh, well, as long as it's optional, who cares? Yeah, as long as it's 100% optional and doesn't influence anything else in the game. And this is where I get concerned. Because, again, use a little bit of critical thinking here, guys. The mere existence of this mode proves they were thinking about this crap during development. What are we going to have to cover up to make the game more family-friendly, I guess? And so, if that mindset exists at all during development, then you have to wonder how this mentality may have affected the overall game. It's clear they're only going to do minor, easy alterations. It's not like they're going to have entirely unique cutscenes, animations, and that to go with each of these modes. So you have to wonder, when they're making these decisions again about the overall game, the stuff that isn't changing between the two versions, is it possible that there's, again, a scene, an animation, a line or something that they feel people in this group, people that they're trying to placate to with this censored mode, may be offended by? And again, you don't have the resources to make these like totally two different games, so the decision is going to have to be made. Do some things end up altered or cut entirely? Again, we'll never really know, but when this title releases, you'll be able to tell if there's a significant tonal shift between 1 and 2 and now 3. And that's where I may have a problem. Again, can't know that until I play the game, but I do reserve the right to play through it and compare it to the past games and be like, man, they really tone stuff down. And again, if that is the case, I think they are doing it for an audience that pretty much doesn't exist. And because I'm so confident in this, there is one amazing thing I think can come from this mode for people that have my type of concerns. And if anybody from Platinum happens to be listening to this, I hope you guys are doing this. I hope with like any online features, online connectivity, I pray you guys track how many people actually play with this mode on. And I mean from like start to finish, not the people who just turn it on to see like the differences. Because my bet would be less than 5% of players play with this mode on, and then of that 5%, half of them did it on accident. Because then you'll be able to look at that data and be like, okay, how much of an audience are we really talking about here, and how much of our game do we really want to alter for them? Because this is also a resource question. How much time and money should be spent on this stuff? Again, the stuff they're doing isn't the craziest, but it does cost resources. And hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the majority of people are absolutely terrified of cleavage, and it's actually worth it to put more money into these types of efforts. But again, I doubt it. I don't think the lack of this mode has cost them any sales, not a single sale up to this point. And I wouldn't want any other types of modes or features to be lacking or be cut entirely because of something a fraction of the players end up using. So yeah, to be clear, with the Naive Angel, with the censorship mode, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it, again, as long as it's an option, but just the simple fact that this option exists doesn't 100% confirm that this mentality didn't influence the rest of the game. That's all I'm saying, and we'll find that out when the game actually releases. Still though, like I said, from what we've seen, the game's looking like it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. Super excited. One of my most anticipated games now of this year for sure. And I love that they're going above and beyond with the Collector's Edition and re-releasing the original game in physical form for Switch. I couldn't be more happy about that. All this stuff just makes it feel like a big deal, which is like what I want. And I hope, of course, the game turns out great and sells well, which just results in more Bayonetta games. More frequent Bayonetta games would be amazing. Anyway, with that, this video's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on all this Bayonetta news in the comments. Are you excited for the game? How do you think this making it in 2022 affects the overall Nintendo 2022 lineup? What do you think about the Naive Angel censorship mode? And are you going to be trying to pick up that collector's edition and or physical copy of the first game? As always, I'm the Shy Guy, Johnny Zakari, and thanks for watching.